saying, Lane?
I did not think it polite to listen, sir.
Yes, well, I feel sorry for you for your sake. You see, I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with, well, a wonderful expression. Yes, as far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep a science for life.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, and speaking of the science of life, have you cut the cucumber sandwiches for Uncle Gussie?
Yes, sir.
Oh, come here. Oh, Lane, I see from your book on Thursday night, yes, when I was dining with Lord Chairman and Mr. Worthing, that 8 bottles of champagne are put down as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I believe it is due to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households the champagne is of a rather inferior brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage truly as demoralizing as that?
On the contrary, sir, I believe it to be a very pleasant state, although I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I'm not sure that I'm all that much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I rarely think of it myself.
All very natural, I'm sure. That'll do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat, well, lax. Really, if the lawyers don't tell us a good example, then what on earth are the use of them? They seem to me, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility at all.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, sir.
How are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in some good societies to have a slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Yes, and who is it that you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
Got good neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello? Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, Amelia, Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm quite afraid that Aunt Augusta won't approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My friend, the way you flirt with Gwendolen, well, it's positively disgraceful. I mean, it's almost as bad as the way that Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I came up to town expressly to propose to her.
Oh, yes? I thought you would come up for pleasure. Sounds to me more like business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I see nothing truly romantic in proposal. I mean, it's all very romantic to be in love. But no, nothing really indefinite proposal. I mean, one may be accepted. I believe one usually is. But then the whole excitement of things is over. I mean, the very essence of romance is uncertainty. Yes, if I ever get married, I'll be sure to try and forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on the matter. Divorces are made in heaven. Oh, and please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. I ordered them especially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
Yes, but that is an entirely different matter. She is my aunt. Please have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Yes, well, you needn't eat as if you were going to eat at all. I mean, you act as if you were married to Gwendolen already. You're not married to Gwendolen already, and I don't think you ever will be.
What on earth makes you say that?
Well, firstly, girls never marry who they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary amount of bachelors one sees around the place. In the second place, well, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Yes. You see, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to go off and marry her, you're going to have to clear up the whole matter of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Lane, please bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Yes, well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up at this time.
My dear fellow, there is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
Well, I find that very mean of you, Ernest. But now that I look on the inside at the inscription, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times. And you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and a fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. You know, more than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of that fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It is not the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. You see, this cigarette case was given as a gift by someone named Cecily. You just said you know no one of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Now, for heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
But if she is your aunt, and she lives at Tunbridge Wells, then why does she call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to... Yes.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter an aunt should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think all aunts should be like your aunt. That is absurd. Now, for heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Now, I have no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make it out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to others as Ernest. You respond to the name of... You look as if your name was Ernest. You look like the most earnest-looking person I've ever met in my entire life. It is absurd to say that your name is anything but Ernest. Look, it's on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. Yes, I'm going to keep this. Just in case you ever try and deny that your name is Ernest to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else, really.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And a cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that still doesn't explain why your little aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, you'd best have the thing out at once.
Oh, my dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now, tell me why. Tell me the whole thing. And might I just say that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a bunburyist?
I'll explain to you the meaning of that incomparable word as soon as you explain to me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Yes, you are. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
Oh, my dear Algy, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me, in his will, guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my house in the country under her esteemed governess, Miss Prism.
Yes, where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly the place is not in Shropshire.
Yes, I figured as much. I've bummed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on, tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in a position of guardian, one is expected to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. As a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth. Pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure. And never simple. If it were, modern life would be, well, very tedious. Modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That would not be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my fellow. Don't try it. Leave that to the people who haven't been to university. They do such a good job of it in the daily paper. What you really are is a bumberist. I was quite right in saying you were a bumberist. You are one of the most advanced bumberists I've ever met in my entire life.
What on earth do you mean?
But I've invented a very useful younger brother under the name of Earnest, so you can come to town when you please. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid under the name of Bumberist, so I might go to the country whenever I please. Bunbury is, well, incredibly invaluable to me. You see, if it weren't for his incredibly bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, because I've actually been, well, engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week now.
I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, it's so careless. Foolish, really. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
No, I have no intention of doing anything of the kind. You see, I already dine there on Monday night, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. Secondly, whenever I do dine there, I am always treated as a member of the family, and always sat down with no woman or two. In the third place, I know exactly who she's going to place me next to tonight. She is going to sit me down with Mary Farquhar. Now, sure, it was her own husband from across the dinner table. Yes. That's not very pleasant. It's not even decent. And it's on the rise, too. The amount of women who are flirting with their own husbands in London, well, it's perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. Besides, now that I know you to be a bumberist, I naturally want to talk to you about bumbering. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. In fact, if Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any place. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. Yes, I'm going to get rid of Earnest, and I strongly suggest you do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will ever induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you do get married, which seems to me to be incredibly problematic, you'll do well to know Bunbury. Because a man who marries without knowing Bunbury has, well, an incredibly tedious time of it.
If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she is the only girl I ever met in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Yes, well then your wife will. You don't seem to realize, fellow, that, well, in married life, 3 is company and 2 is nothing.
That is the theory the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home is proven in half that time.
Oh, for heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's not easy to be anything nowadays. There's so much beastly competition about. Well, that must be Aunt Augusta now. Only creditors and relations ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now listen. If I get her out of the way, say, 10 minutes, so that you have an opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, will you dine with me tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
But you must be serious about it.
Of course.
I hate people who aren't serious about meals. So shallow of them.